Now, the Jewish authorities don't have the ability to actually execute someone. So they bring Jesus to Pilate, who does. He's the Roman governor. And I can imagine that as they bring Jesus to Pilate, Pilate doing one of those like fake migraine, like nose pinch things. Because remember, this is Passover. This is a time when people are reenacting and remembering God's rescue from slavery. And everyone's going to be a little jumpy and a little excited and especially resentful of the Roman occupation. So they get some guy who may or may not be inciting rebellion, Jesus, and they bring it to him, but they also could be overreacting. And Pilate never really got along with his uh, Jewish co-rulers, if you will. And so you can imagine Pilate's annoyance here. So Pilate obliges them, brings Jesus in, and throws him a softball question. It's the equivalent of saying, "Yeah, so are you guilty or what? Just tell me right now." And Jesus then makes the power move. He doesn't get defensive. He doesn't explain himself. He says, when Pilate says, "So are you a king or what?" Jesus says, "Did you come up with that on your own or did someone else tell you?" In other words, putting it all back on Pilate, which is a gutsy thing to do for the guy who does actually have the authority to kill you. So, in the course of their conversation, Jesus makes it clear that he is a king, but not a king of a kingdom that originates in this world. It originates somewhere else. And the example he uses is really striking that if he were a normal king, then his followers would be fighting to prevent him from being handed over. And that's critical because there were at least a dozen messianic type movements on either side of Jesus' life that we know about. And they were all based in violence, except, of course, for Jesus. And that was the big threat. That's what Pilate is trying to determine. Is this guy and his followers going to start a violent rebellion that threatens the safety and security of Rome and her interests? So Pilate then just brushes off any notion of truth. What is truth? I think because for Pilate, the only truth he knows comes at the end of a Roman spear. He's not interested in actual real truth. He's just interested in the power to determine what is true. So anyway, Pilate doesn't think he deserves death and passes him back. This guy is not going to start a rebellion. He's not going to cause any threats to safety and security. But apparently there's a custom that because this is Passover, Pilate would release a prisoner. Now, this tells us a few things, but one of them is that if you are a prisoner, then it is political in nature, not just criminal. So they bring out Barabbas. You've got Barabbas and you have Jesus. And a lot of times translations will say that Barabbas was a robber or something like that. But if you're a thief, or you've committed robbery, that's just a criminal violation. That's not political. And if Barabbas is a prisoner like this and he might be set free on Passover, that means whatever he did is political in nature too. So it turns out what Barabbas is described as, in Greek it's a lestes, is more of an insurrectionist, somebody who is violent, politically motivated. They will tend to steal, especially targeting those who are associated with the Romans. And I think it's easiest if you think of like Robin Hood, robbing from the political opponents while at the same time inciting rebellion and committing some kind of act of terrorism. That's what Barabbas really is. And in a wild twist of fate or irony or God's providence or whatever you want to call it, you then have a situation where there's Barabbas, the guilty, apparently violent insurrectionist, and you have Jesus. And Barabbas goes free and Jesus goes to his death. But Barabbas, or Bar Abbas in Aramaic, means son of the Father. So you have the guilty, fake son of the Father going free, and then you have the true divine son of the Father, Jesus, going to his grave. John knows exactly what he's doing as he describes this great exchange where the guilty, like you and me, go free, whereas Jesus, the innocent one, goes to his grave.